Hey, John here. As we did some alternate picking yesterday with 2 notes per string, I figured we should do a 3 note per string thing today. And it's going to be a classic alternate picking run, ascending and descending sixes. This one is probably the one that I learned to play fast first when it comes to any type of fast alternate picking stuff. So it's a really good one. And also it's all over the place if you listen to 80s guitar rock. Anyone who had decent picking technique have used this at one time or another. So I'm going to show you a couple of clips as well from Key Marcello and Paul Gilbert. But first, here's the pick and run ascending. And here's the pick and run descending. And a combination. I'm actually going to give you 2 approaches to the practice routine. One mechanical, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that, and then one that's very similar to the one we did yesterday, but in this case, we're going to use 3 note per string patterns instead of 2 note per string patterns. So let's just start with the sequence itself. So I play this in E minor. Same key as G major, but E minor, I think most of you should be familiar with that. I'm just going to show you the scale shape first. So we start 12, 14, 15 on E, same thing on A. Then we have 12, 14, 16 on D and G. Then we have 13, 15, 17 on B, and finally 14, 15, 17 on the E string. So that's the first shape. Then we move up to the next shape, which is going to be, I'm going to start from the top here. So we have 19, 17, 15 on E and B. Then we have 17, 16, 14 on G and D. And finally we have 17, 15, 14 on A and E. So those are 2 out of the 7 shapes. The other shapes you can find a link in the description below, or simply Google 3 note per string shapes, E minor, and you'll find that as well. So either way works. The sequence then, it's going to be 6 notes ascending. Then you repeat that on each string group. So you started here on the E string, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, alternate picking. And then you start again on the A string. Restart on the D string, on the G string, B string. So that's the ascending version, and then the descending version, we move up to the next shape. Obviously you can do it in this shape as well, and you should do it in all shapes, but in terms of the big combined picking lick that I showed you in the beginning, this is what I'm doing. So basically you shift up to 19, and then you go down in sixes instead. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, restart on the string you're at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, restart on G, restart on D, on A, and then you're done. So that's the entire thing. It's a very simple sequence. Now, as far as practicing this, the diatonic approach, you can do exactly the same thing we did with the pentatonic practice routine yesterday. So check that out if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about. And basically, you take each of these 7 shapes, start at the lowest position, and in this case, we avoid open strings. So at least that's what I do. If you absolutely want to do that, feel free. But so we're basically starting here in F minor, and then you go up in the, if we start with this shape that is, I just go up in the same way. And then the first part of the routine will be to shift up and do exactly the same shape in the next key basically. So you have to move up chromatically. Which would end up in F sharp minor, and then you go up to G minor, and so on, all the way up until you reach the top of the fretboard. And now you can do exactly what we did yesterday. When you go back down again, you start with an upstroke instead, so that you're basically turning the picking around. And this is really good for your overall technique, so you don't paint yourself into a corner musically, where you're only familiar and comfortable with picking in one way. So this is a good thing to think about whenever you do any kind of alternate picking, and Steve Morse, John Petrucci, among others, really talk about the same thing. So it's a really important thing in my opinion. So give it a try. And then you do that with the remaining 6 shapes. And once you've done that, you start connecting them. So now you're gonna go up in shape 1. So let's just do the first one we did here. So up in this one, and then down in the next one, still in the same key. And you apply the same sequence as before. In the pentatonic one, I suggested you do it twice. In this one, is so many notes and so many repetitions, and the fingering is going to remain the same anyway, so you can just do it once, but I still would end on the first note again, so like this. Move up a fret, and so on, all the way up the fretboard, and then you do the same thing coming back again. And once you've done that, if you want to do the third part of the exercise, and when I said once you've done that, I mean when you've done this going up in shape 1, whatever shape you call 1 in those 7 shapes. So up in shape 1, down in shape 2, up in shape 2, down in shape 3, up in 3, down in 4, up in 4, down in 5, up in 5, down in 6, up in 6, down in 7, and then up in 7 and down in 1. So when you've done that, you've done all the possible combinations of going from one shape to the next when they're next to each other. Once you've done that, which will take quite a while, you do everything again, but now you start at the top of the second shape. So this shape we did here, right? So let's call this the first shape. We're still gonna go down in the second shape, meaning down in pitch, and we're gonna go up in the first shape in this case, but we start at the top, so we're gonna start and end at the top. So and then you move that up 1 fret, do the same thing, all the way up, change through an upstroke, and all the way down again. So once you've done that, you're probably very sick of this sequence, but your picking technique will also be way better. Now, if you don't want to faff around with these scale shapes and you're like, nah, I just want to get the technique down, you can use what I call a mechanical approach. And for 3 notes per string, you simply divide your 4 fingers into the 3-finger combinations, meaning 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, and 2, 3, 4. And then you just play the sequence with each of these fingerings. So I'm just going to show that on the 5th fret now, but it's going to be basically the same thing we did. So start with 1, 2, 3. Same thing, but you would start down here. All the way up, change to an upstroke, all the way down. Then you take the next fingering, 1, 2, 4. All the way up, same way, and then you do 1, 3, 4. And finally, if you're really brave and, you know, masochistic, you do 2, 3, 4 as well. Seriously though, doing 2, 3, 4 is going to help you so much when it comes to getting your hand balanced. So you do exactly the same thing, up and down the neck, and then you're basically done. So obviously these you don't need to combine them into going up in shape 1 and down in 2 and stuff like that. So this routine actually takes less time to do. But I think this one is really good to do because it's sort of key and tonality agnostic, because you're simply working on a particular fingering here, right? And once you're synchronized with 1, 2, 4, for example, doesn't really matter if you go, you know, if you spread the fingers a little bit, it's not going to make a big difference in terms of your synchronization. So it's a real time saver in that way. But of course, if you do only this thing and you don't focus on the scales, you're going to sound kind of weird in the long run. So it's good to do both. But especially if you're kind of new to this, I think it's a good idea to maybe start with the mechanical patterns, and once you feel comfortable with the sequence, then you can start checking out the 3 note per string shapes. Because if you start with the shapes right away, you might feel a bit overwhelmed because there's so much stuff to keep in mind, and also it doesn't feel really good to play, you know, just yet. So This mechanical approach, even though it sounds super unmusical when you do it, it's actually really helpful. So I use this a lot in my practice still, because you can really focus on a specific part of the technique that you have issues with. All right, that's it for this one. If you have any questions, just post them below. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next one.